Casinos, the playgrounds of the rich, the reckless, and the risk-takers. But some don't come to play. They come to take. Across history, masterminds, high rollers, and desperate criminals have attempted the impossible, stealing millions from the most secure gambling fortresses on Earth. Some came breathtakingly close, others vanished without a trace, and a few? Well, they weren't so lucky. From high-tech scams to daring getaways, these are the 7 casino heists that were almost perfect, but not quite. The MIT Blackjack Team Heist. The MIT Blackjack Team was a group of students and ex-students from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Harvard University, and other prestigious colleges who successfully exploited the game of blackjack using card-counting techniques. Their story began in the late 1970s, but it wasn't until the 1980s and 1990s that the team truly perfected its approach. The idea was simple yet brilliant. Use a mathematically sound system to track the deck's composition and bet accordingly. The team, made up of highly intelligent individuals with a passion for strategy, spent years refining their technique and executing their plans in some of the most well-known casinos in the world. Card counting itself isn't illegal, but casinos view it as a major threat to their profits and take extreme measures to prevent it. The MIT Blackjack Team operated under strict discipline and an intricate system of signals. They worked in teams, with some members acting as spotters who would place small bets and subtly signal to the big players when the count was in their favor. This allowed the team to blend in without raising suspicions. By the time casinos noticed that a particular player was making big bets, that person was already cashing out and leaving. The team traveled across the United States and internationally, raking in millions of dollars over the years. Casinos, however, quickly caught on to the unusual winning streaks of certain players. Despite wearing disguises, using fake names, and constantly changing their strategies, the team began to face increased scrutiny. Casino security teams hired specialists trained in recognizing counting techniques, and soon, photos of suspected counters were circulated among major casinos. The team members were often confronted, banned, or threatened when recognized. Some of them managed to get away with their winnings, while others had their cash confiscated and were blacklisted. Ultimately, the pressure became too intense, and the operation fell apart in the early 2000s. Team members moved on, some writing books about their experiences, while others transitioned into finance, using their statistical skills for legal gain. The MIT Blackjack Team left a lasting impact on casino security, prompting establishments to refine their countermeasure strategies, including frequent deck shuffling and facial recognition software. Despite its eventual downfall, the operation remains one of the most legendary casino heists, not a traditional robbery, but a meticulously planned scheme that pushed the limits of legal gambling. The Crown Casino Billions Scam. The Crown Casino in Melbourne, Australia, became the stage for one of the most audacious casino scams in history, a scheme so intricate that it nearly succeeded in swindling the establishment out of millions. In 2013, a high-rolling gambler, working in conjunction with an insider, managed to exploit the casino's high-tech surveillance system to cheat at the game of poker. Unlike most heists that involve armed robberies or brute force, this operation was executed through technological manipulation and a deep understanding of the casino's security systems. The scam revolved around the casino's security cameras, which were meant to monitor games and prevent cheating, but were instead used against the establishment itself. The player involved was a well-known high roller who had been granted access to the casino's ultra-luxurious VIP gaming rooms. He was playing high-stakes poker when, unbeknownst to the casino staff, the surveillance system had been compromised. An accomplice in the casino's security team was feeding him real-time information about the hands of other players at the table. By relaying this information discreetly, the player was able to make perfectly calculated bets, giving him an overwhelming advantage. For a brief period, the plan worked flawlessly. The high roller won a staggering $32 million in just a few hands, an amount so large that it immediately raised red flags among the casino's executives. Winning big at a casino isn't uncommon, but the pattern of play, combined with the rapid accumulation of wealth, suggested something unnatural. Security teams quickly launched an internal investigation, reviewing surveillance footage and analyzing gameplay. They soon discovered irregularities in the way the cameras were being accessed and determined that an insider was involved. Before the player could collect his winnings, the casino revoked his right to cash out, effectively nullifying the scam. Once the security breach was confirmed, the gambler was banned from the casino and his VIP privileges were stripped. Authorities were alerted, but due to the murky legal nature of the scam, where the winnings were obtained through unauthorized information rather than direct fraud, it became difficult to press charges. The insider responsible for the security breach was swiftly fired, and Crown Casino took immediate measures to reinforce its surveillance protocols to prevent similar incidents in the future. The Crown Casino heist was not a typical robbery, but rather an elaborate manipulation of technology and human trust. Unlike traditional casino cheats who use sleight of hand or marked cards, this scheme relied on a much more sophisticated approach that exposed a serious vulnerability in the casino's security network. Though the perpetrators did not walk away with the money, their near success sent shockwaves through the industry, forcing casinos worldwide to reevaluate how they protect their surveillance systems. The Bellagio Biker Bandit Robbery. The Bellagio in Las Vegas, one of the most famous casinos in the world, became the target of an audacious heist in December 2010. The perpetrator, later identified as Anthony Carleo, executed a brazen plan that seemed straight out of a Hollywood movie. Armed and wearing a full-face motorcycle helmet, Carleo stormed into the Bellagio's high-stakes craps table area, brandishing a gun. Without hesitation, he grabbed nearly $1.5 million worth of casino chips before making a daring escape on his motorcycle into the night. The entire robbery took less than 3 minutes, leaving casino security stunned. The heist was seemingly flawless at first. Carleo's choice to steal high-value chips rather than cash made it more difficult for authorities to track the loot. However, this also presented a significant problem for him. Unlike money, casino chips needed to be exchanged within the casino itself, and large denominations were closely monitored. The Bellagio security team immediately flagged the stolen chips, particularly the rare $25,000 denomination ones, making it nearly impossible for Carleo to cash them in without drawing suspicion. Despite his seemingly careful planning during the heist, Carleo's downfall came from his reckless behavior afterward. He began spending extravagantly in Las Vegas, frequenting casinos and lavish parties while trying to offload the stolen chips. Desperate for cash, he made the mistake of attempting to sell the high-value chips online. In a bizarre twist, Carleo himself bragged about the heist to an undercover police officer, even calling himself the Biker Bandit. This reckless admission provided authorities with all the evidence they needed. Law enforcement moved quickly, arresting Carleo in early 2011. During his trial, it became clear that he had acted alone and had no real long-term strategy for laundering the stolen chips. His motivation was rooted in a severe gambling addiction and financial desperation. Ultimately, he was convicted and sentenced to serve up to 16 years in prison. The Bellagio, having swiftly invalidated the stolen chips, suffered no financial loss from the robbery. Carleo's heist is remembered as a bold, yet ultimately flawed attempt at robbing a casino. While his plan succeeded in the moment, his inability to cash out his winnings and his careless actions afterward ensured his downfall. The case reinforced the effectiveness of modern casino security, demonstrating how difficult it is to profit from stolen chips, no matter how well a robbery is initially executed. The Ritz London Roulette Scam. In 2004, 3 gamblers walked into the Ritz Club an exclusive London casino, and managed to pull off one of the most remarkable scams in casino history. Over the course of 2 nights, they won an astonishing £1.3 million at the roulette tables using a sophisticated method that involved technology rather than traditional cheating techniques. Their plan revolved around a technique known as sector targeting, combined with high-tech laser scanning to predict the outcome of spins. The scam was executed by 2 men and 1 woman, all of Eastern European descent, who arrived at the casino dressed as wealthy high rollers. They played at a specific roulette wheel, carefully choosing their bets while appearing to follow normal gambling behavior. What the casino staff didn't know was that the trio had smuggled in a high-tech laser scanner, discreetly embedded in a mobile phone, which was used to analyze the movement of the roulette wheel. The device measured the velocity of the ball and the wheel, calculating the most likely landing area based on physics and probability. By placing their bets at the last possible moment, just before the croupier called "no more bets," they were able to dramatically increase their chances of winning. The results were astonishing. The trio kept winning at an unnatural rate, quickly amassing a fortune. Casino staff grew suspicious, but had no immediate evidence of wrongdoing. Winning streaks happen, but the consistency of their success defied logic. The management reviewed security footage and noticed the trio's unusual betting patterns, prompting them to call the police. The gamblers were arrested that same night, and authorities seized their devices for investigation. However, in a surprising turn of events, the trio was never convicted of any crime. Since they hadn't physically interfered with the roulette wheel or tampered with casino equipment, there was no clear legal precedent to charge them with fraud. Their strategy relied on exploiting physics rather than traditional cheating methods like card marking or chip manipulation. As a result, after months of legal battles, they were released, and the case was dropped. Despite walking free, the trio never received their winnings, as the casino refused to pay out the contested amount. The Ritz Club tightened its security and surveillance procedures after the incident, ensuring that similar scams would be much harder to pull off in the future. This case remains one of the most fascinating examples of high-tech gambling exploits, proving that sometimes intelligence and technology can outsmart even the most well-guarded casinos, at least temporarily. The Stardust Casino Skim. The Stardust Casino in Las Vegas became the site of one of the most infamous long-running casino thefts in history. Unlike the typical high-stakes heist that involves a dramatic getaway or armed robbery, this heist was an inside job that spanned over a decade, quietly siphoning millions of dollars from the casino without raising immediate alarms. The mastermind behind the scheme was a man named Bill Brennan, a mild-mannered and seemingly unremarkable employee who worked as a cashier at the casino's sportsbook. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, Las Vegas was notorious for its mob connections, and skimming money from casinos was a common practice. Organized crime syndicates would arrange for casino managers or employees to divert unrecorded cash from the books before it was declared as revenue. While many of these operations were eventually exposed, the Stardust Skim operated undetected for years, making it one of the most successful thefts in casino history. The money was taken in small, consistent amounts, ensuring that no immediate discrepancies were noticed in accounting records. Bill Brennan, however, took a more direct and personal approach to stealing from the Stardust. Unlike organized crime syndicates that used complex networks to launder money, Brennan simply decided one day to walk out of the casino with an enormous sum of money. In September 1992, he left work carrying a bag filled with $500,000 in cash and casino chips. The most astonishing part? He was never seen again. No dramatic escape, no car chase, just a quiet disappearance. Authorities were baffled by how easily Brennan had managed to pull off the theft. He had been a trusted employee with no prior criminal record, which allowed him to operate under the radar. The casino's security measures at the time were far less sophisticated than modern surveillance and tracking systems, making it relatively easy for an insider to exploit gaps in oversight. Despite being placed on the FBI's most wanted list, Brennan vanished without a trace. There were rumors that he had fled the country, possibly to South America or somewhere remote where he could live comfortably off his stolen fortune. Others speculated that he had been eliminated by criminal associates or had changed his identity to avoid detection. Unlike most casino heists, which end in arrest or failure, Brennan's story remains an unsolved mystery. The Stardust was eventually demolished in 2006, and with it, the secrets of its financial scandals disappeared. To this day, no one knows if Brennan is still alive, hiding in some far-off location, or if he met an unknown fate. His heist is remembered not for its complexity or violence, but for its sheer simplicity, walking out the front door with $500,000 and never looking back. The Treasure Island Armored Car Heist. In October 1993, the Treasure Island Casino in Las Vegas became the target of one of the most daring armored car heists in history. Unlike many casino thefts that involve gambling scams or inside jobs, this heist was a full-fledged armed robbery that played out like a high-stakes crime thriller. The mastermind was Reginald Johnson, a security guard with deep knowledge of the casino's cash-handling procedures. He planned to hit an armored vehicle transporting cash from the casino, a move that required both precise timing and brute force. Johnson had an advantage. He knew the exact schedule of cash pickups and the weaknesses in security coverage. On the day of the heist, he waited for the armored truck to arrive at the Treasure Island Casino. As the guards began transferring the money, he ambushed them with a semi-automatic weapon, overpowering the security detail before they could react. In a matter of minutes, he made off with over $2.5 million in cash, disappearing into the streets of Las Vegas before law enforcement could respond. The heist was executed so swiftly that at first, investigators believed it had to be an inside job. Security footage showed a masked assailant who moved with purpose, suggesting that he knew the casino's procedures intimately. It didn't take long for the authorities to connect the crime to Johnson, who had been displaying erratic behavior before the heist and had been overheard discussing plans to leave town suddenly. Despite his initial success, Johnson's freedom was short-lived. Within weeks of the robbery, the FBI tracked him down to a hideout in Las Vegas. In a tense confrontation, authorities arrested him, recovering a portion of the stolen money. However, a significant amount of the cash was never found, leading to speculation that Johnson had hidden it somewhere before his capture. During his trial, Johnson attempted to downplay his role in the heist, but overwhelming evidence, including surveillance footage, witness testimony, and his prior knowledge of casino operations, ensured a conviction. He was sentenced to a lengthy prison term, effectively ending any hopes of enjoying his stolen fortune. The case became one of the most famous armored car heists in Las Vegas history, demonstrating both the vulnerabilities of cash transport operations and the effectiveness of law enforcement in tracking down major casino criminals. The Treasure Island heist remains a cautionary tale for casinos and security firms. It exposed weaknesses in armored transport security and led to increased protections, such as more rigorous background checks for security personnel and enhanced tracking systems for cash movements. While Johnson ultimately failed to escape justice, his bold attempt at a multi-million-dollar robbery cemented his place in the history of casino heists. The Circus Casino disappearance. The Circus Casino in Las Vegas became the center of a perplexing and still unsolved casino heist in 1993 when a young woman named Heather Talchief, along with her accomplice Roberto Solis, pulled off a daring robbery that left authorities baffled for years. Talchief, a 21-year-old woman with no prior criminal record, had been working as a driver for Loomis, a cash handling and armored vehicle service responsible for transporting casino money. Her job gave her access to millions of dollars in casino cash, and she soon became the perfect insider for one of the most well-planned casino heists in history. Tall Chief had been recruited by Solis, a convicted bank robber who had a deep understanding of how to execute a flawless crime. The plan was simple yet incredibly effective. Use Tall Chief's position as an armored truck driver to disappear with a massive amount of money without raising suspicion. On October 1st, 1993, Tall Chief was scheduled to drive her Loomis armored truck to pick up cash from the Circus Casino. Everything seemed routine as she pulled into the casino's parking area, where she was supposed to wait for the guards to return from collecting the casino's cash deposits. Instead of following protocol, Tall Chief simply drove away with the armored vehicle, vanishing into the Las Vegas desert with nearly $3 million in cash. By the time her co-workers and law enforcement realized something was wrong, she was already long gone. It was one of the cleanest heists in history. No guns, no violence, just a quiet disappearance. For years, authorities searched for Tall Chief and Solis, but they seemed to have vanished without a trace. The case took a shocking turn in 2005 when Tall Chief, now in her mid-30s, turned herself in after over a decade on the run. She revealed that she had spent years living under false identities and constantly moving to evade authorities. However, she also claimed that after the heist, Solis had abandoned her, leaving her with none of the stolen money. According to Tall Chief, she had been manipulated into participating in the crime and had spent most of her life on the run, struggling with guilt and paranoia. Despite her cooperation with authorities, Solis was never found, and the bulk of the stolen money was never recovered. Tall Chief was sentenced to 63 months in prison for her role in the heist, but was released on parole after serving her time. Her story remains one of the most fascinating casino heists in history, primarily because it was executed so flawlessly, yet ended with an unexpected confession. The mystery of where Solis went and what happened to the stolen millions continues to intrigue law enforcement and true crime enthusiasts to this day. The Soboba Casino Robbery. The Soboba Casino in California became the target of a high-stakes heist in 2007 when a group of criminals executed a violent and well-coordinated robbery that resulted in a dangerous standoff with police. Unlike other casino heists that relied on stealth, trickery, or inside information, this one was a brutal armed robbery, more reminiscent of an old-fashioned Wild West shootout than a high-tech scheme. The robbers, wearing ski masks and heavily armed, stormed the Soboba Casino just before dawn. They moved with military-like precision, overwhelming casino security and forcing employees to open the cash vault. The criminals knew exactly when to strike, right after a busy weekend when the casino's reserves were at their highest. Within minutes, they had secured over $1.5 million in cash. Their aggressive tactics terrified the casino staff, who complied with their demands to avoid bloodshed. Once they secured the money, the robbers fled the scene in getaway vehicles. However, their escape didn't go as smoothly as planned. Law enforcement was quickly alerted, and police units from multiple jurisdictions pursued the suspects in a high-speed chase. The situation escalated into a dangerous firefight when the criminals opened fire on officers, leading to a dramatic gun battle in the desert outside of Riverside County. The sheer firepower of the robbers indicated that they were professionals, possibly former military personnel or cartel-affiliated criminals. Despite their initial advantage, the suspects eventually found themselves cornered in the rugged terrain. The police responded with overwhelming force, and after a prolonged standoff, most of the suspects were either killed or captured. Authorities recovered a significant portion of the stolen money, but some of it was never accounted for, leading to speculation that an unknown accomplice managed to escape with part of the loot. The Soboba Casino Heist was one of the most violent casino robberies in modern history, demonstrating how high-stakes crime can escalate into deadly encounters. Unlike other heists where the perpetrators try to outsmart the system, this robbery relied purely on brute force and intimidation. It ended in disaster for the criminals, reinforcing the idea that a well-planned heist requires more than just weapons. It requires an escape plan. The survivors of the gang were sentenced to lengthy prison terms, ensuring they would never attempt such a crime again. The Soboba heist remains a cautionary tale for both casinos and criminals. While some casino heists are almost perfect in execution, this one was a classic example of how things can go disastrously wrong when greed, violence, and poor planning collide.